Welcome to the NPX Innovation Catalyst podcast, the podcast where we talk to innovative leaders in the nuclear industry and beyond. I'm your host, Margaret McBeth, co-founder and innovation catalyst at NPX. Today we're speaking with Jeff Richardson, Senior Vice President of Darlington Refurbishment at Ontario Power Generation. Just, I guess, by way of a bit of an introduction about you, but you joined OPG as the Senior Vice President of Refurb in 2018?
Correct.
All right. And you're not a Canadian.
You can tell by my accent I'm not a Canadian, although I tell people I'm from Southern Ontario just as an icebreaker. But no, I'm originally from Arkansas in the United States, went to university there, got my degree in electrical engineering. I've lived the previous 18 years in Jackson, Mississippi, which is the nuclear headquarters for a vertically integrated utility called Entergy, which is where I spent most of my career up until the move to OPG last year. And so I didn't really think too much, honestly, about, it's going to be a different culture, it's going to be different country, a different company. I really just looked at it like this is another new opportunity to do something I haven't done before. The corporate structure was not something that was unfamiliar to me, didn't feel foreign. And I'll say also that the sense I got from very early on at OPG was that most people had been there a long time. They'd been with the company most of their careers, or at least for decades, and it felt very much like a family. And that was the experience I had at Entergy, and one that I really appreciated and really enjoyed. In terms of some of the differences, there are some differences. One of the jokes I continue to talk about is I'm still learning how to say project and process instead of project and process. I'm still learning how to say turbine instead of turbine, which is the way I'd grown up saying it for my entire career in the U.S. So subtle little cultural differences like that. I was telling a couple of my coworkers not too long ago that I'd never had to deal so often with paternity and maternity leave.
Oh yes, it's so different.
The U.S. utility was, the average age was well into the 40s. So coming into OPG with so many young people was just, I'm not going to see that person for a year, for 6 weeks, or 3 months, or whatever. Was that was one of the things that stood out to me as unusual and really exciting. I mean, in terms of working with people who are at the early stages of their career and have a lot of energy and new ideas and initiative to take us to the next level of performance.
I guess, are you pleased with the speed of innovation in OPG and in the industry, and where do you see the biggest opportunities for innovation right now?
The answer is yes. I'm pleased with what OPG has done. You heard a little bit in the symposium last week, some of what we're doing with our tooling innovations. We're literally taking months and months off of our schedule for the subsequent units through pure technical improvements to our tooling and equipment, learned through the experience at Darlington Unit 2. So I'm really pleased with that. Whether it's our IRI organization and their innovations in inspection and support capability, or the X Labs and the technology and techniques that they're developing for a variety of activities, or the internal things within Refurb, like the D3 IP initiative that Derek Billick talked about last week. All those are really exciting to see, and they really are yielding absolutely value-added results for the future of refurb at Darlington and elsewhere.
So I'm curious about your thoughts of the role of companies like NPX within the startups, or companies that haven't traditionally found a place in nuclear with different types of technologies, be it machine learning, analytics. Do you see a shift happening, and do you see a role for that sort of disruptive companies and disruptive technologies in the industry?
There's no question that nuclear power has a number of enemies at the gate, to borrow a phrase. So whether it's the competition from shale gas pricing in the U.S., or the challenges of waste management and other alternative renewable technologies that are out there to be responsive to climate change. There's a lot of challengers to the nuclear industry, not to mention, we have to be unrelenting in our guard for safety and quality because we're the final, the the final analysis, the most important thing we have in nuclear power is to guard the technology and to make sure our people and the public are safe. I think that we are in a particular position in these last 5 to 10 years, and certainly the next 5 to 10 years, where the industry is looking around for the vectors, for the forcing functions that are going to give us the edge to make the transition, to sustain ourselves, to be a viable industry going forward. So I think in that regard, companies like NPX, initiatives like you're sponsoring, the use of technology, leveraging machine learning, things like that are all, this is as good of a time as ever for the nuclear industry to embrace those opportunities and to see what kind of value they can add to the industry.
Obviously, from the talk I saw last week, you're someone who enjoys or has a passion for adventure sports, and I noted from your biography that you are a fan of endurance sports. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah,
I think, and I like the way you said a fan of rather than I am an endurance athlete, because I'm not an endurance athlete. I aspire to be one.
Me too.
It wasn't until my mid-30s that I discovered running, and subsequent to that I've been consistently a runner for coming up on 20 years now. But along the way, just the idea of I have to say I like the isolation, of being on a 4-hour run or being out cycling for 5 or 6 hours, by yourself, being in a pool for 45 minutes, without bringing your head up too often. And so that I don't know what it is about that, but it's just a real. To me, it's a very kind of calming, centering activity. Maybe even meditative at certain periods of those processes. And I love the discipline it requires, in training for whether it's a marathon or a long distance triathlon. The rigor of building your life around these kind of activities. I remember I was about halfway through training for my first half Ironman, and was literally spending about 15 hours a week, either in the water, on the saddle, or on the road. And it got, from the outside looking at that schedule, it was really intimidating. Where am I going to find an extra, 15, 16 hours a week? But once you were in it, it was almost like this. It was almost comforting to have that framework of discipline forming the backbone of your week. Whatever meeting I was in, whatever decisions were pending, whatever crises we were responding to at the time, you knew that in 2 hours you're going to be in a pool swimming 3,000 meters, and that's all that you'd be thinking about was one stroke after the other. So that to me was something that's really resonated, and it's been, I think, for me personally, it's been a really powerful stress and anxiety coping mechanism. And I'm certainly, I don't aspire to be competitive in any of those things, but just the practice of it itself has been really a great solace to me and a great benefit to me, I think.
Kind of on the topic of failure, because I think it's really important, particularly if you want to do anything great, you've got to embrace failure. How do you do that with your own team? How do you kind of help people embrace failure and share with comfort?
I came across this idea a while ago that stuck with me, that culture is defined by who you hire, by who you fire, and by who you admire. So if people experience a place where they can share an idea that gets shot down, and yet their experience is that they're still a welcome part of the team, they're still sought out for ideas and to contribute, then they'll learn this is a place where I can throw out my crazy idea, and only 1 out of 10 may stick, but the other 9 people don't hold against me. I think it's important to portray that we all play a part, but we're all learning, and we're all trying to do our best, and we all fail. And so I think being human and accessible is a lot more powerful of a message from a leader than being perfect and being the smartest guy in the room. So I think how we behave in that regard, being open to ideas, listening more than we speak, are all ways that leaders can help drive that culture of contribution and empowerment, and people feeling like they really can be a part of something.
Thanks for listening to the NPX Innovation Catalyst podcast. To hear the full podcast and to subscribe, You can go to Apple Podcasts, Google, or wherever podcasts are available.